So, welcome back at the last part of our conference, where we have as an esteemed keynote speaker, Professor Natasha VITA-MORE, who is an awarded winning creative uh, awards have been honored at Women in Video, Moscow Film Festival, Telluride Film Festival, London Museum, England Musette, Louvre Museum, and Brooks Memorial Museum. Natasha achieved the scientific discovery on long-term memory in the field of cryobiology. Former department chair of graduate studies at UAT, she's currently faculty at GCLS and distinguished senior fellow Center for Future Mind. Natasha is featured in New York Times, Vogue, Politico, Forbes, over 2,000 televised documentaries, and named one of the top 50 women in longevity. Natasha will talk today about evolving minds, coherence amid the complexity. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and I thank you for inviting me. I'm so impressed by your other keynote, Stefan Sorgner, who is a marvelous thinker and philosopher. So having me as the second keynote is certainly an honor to be in such astute company. And I was only able to listen to the last speaker whose talk was exceptional, and I'm sure all speakers were exceptional, and I wish I could be there in person, but with no further ado, I will start. An area of interest for me personally in the midst of philosophy is about how the human mind has evolved over time and where we're headed in the future. And it ties into the last speaker who talked about Huxley and the earliest usage, one of the earliest usages of the term transhumanism, and how it was sequestered to a certain area within biology. And it was never a philosophy then, but became a philosophy many, many decades later. And where we are now in looking at human enhancement and augmentation and different issues about what is ethical and how do we do it with a level of human individual choice, dignity, and autonomy, and without coercion. That's a very important topic that fits in very nicely here. Our human minds have been evolving for quite a long time, ever since our species first came about, to the prefrontal cortex, to the lobe, to the use of computers today that continue to help us through digitality, through different devices and wearables, and this video right now that I'm speaking through to you via technology. So the technology that has enhanced and augmented our daily communications is phenomenal. And we often take it for granted. And we think, oh no, we can't do that over there because that's not normal or that's not ethical. But yet we use technology to enhance ourselves every moment of our lives. The coherence amid complexity, I want to start with discussing because I think there is some complexity in philosophy today in often missing key points that are so essential and parroting what others are saying and continually referring to the same philosophical citations that our professors or our teachers or those who we admire use. As philosophers, we really need to do our own work and find the nuggets to build off of and reduce our citations and increase our own knowledge and awareness and information that we can share. So let me start with my slide here. Okay, there. I'd like to start with talking about original transhumanism, not Huxley's transhumanism. That it was not a movement, it wasn't a worldview, and it wasn't a philosophy. It was a theoretical approach to looking at how humans could evolve. He was a biologist, and that's how he saw it, through the lens of that particular science. There, of course, was Dante Alighieri, Dante, who used the term transhumanar, and there was certainly Eliot in his play The Cocktail Party, who used the term transhumanized. So the idea of transhuman has been around for a very long time. In 1983, I wrote the Transhuman Manifesto, and here it is in short and sweet, and it's very poetic. It was included on board the Cassini-Huygens spacecraft on its mission to Saturn, and we know that it crashed into Saturn to prevent any debris or problems with the moons and the atmosphere around Saturn. So it had to kind of do a kamikaze. But the beauty is that the word transhuman, or the vision of the transhuman, went out of our planet, out into space. And regardless of anyone seeing it or not, it's the idea of taking our ideas beyond ourselves and expanding them into our world, our community, our world, our solar system, and beyond. You can read this at your desire, but the main point is we are the architects of our existence. We ought never to have our autonomy taken away, and that is the key of philosophy, to understand and reason who we are, why we're here, and where we're going. In 1990, the philosophy of transhumanism was written, and as a philosophy. Now, mind you, that's not to discredit anyone else who wrote about transhumanism, but as a philosophy by a philosopher in the field of philosophy. And I want to make that distinction because we're all academics here, and we know the importance of our particular fields of inquiry and study and degrees, where where we get our certification and degree. And my PhD is in philosophy, and that is important. But it's within a certain distinct area of philosophy. So transhumanism was written as a philosophy to start out, and that was published around 1989, but it became fully published in 1990. The idea about transhumanism as a philosophy and a movement began in 1990 through Extropy Institute. And there was High Gloss magazine. The website is still up. You can go look at it. But this is very interesting history, because what were people thinking in 1990? That's last century. And it wasn't that far ago, but we have changed so much over the past decades. It's interesting to go back and take a look at what the original philosophy of transhumanism was petitioning, what its mission was at that time, and if we're still carrying it forward, or how have we changed. In 1998, the Transhumanist Declaration was written and published, and this was an international declaration. It was not owned or run by any organization like Extropy Institute or World Transhumanist Association. It was a combined effort of DTrans in the Netherlands, of Aleph in Sweden, and different countries around the world, of people who got together and wrote this declaration. It's very interesting to read it because our values have stayed consistent. In 1998, the Transhumanist Fact was written to try to clarify, explain what transhumanism is, and it was revised in 2021 by Nick Bostrom at Oxford University, formerly at Yale, and then it has been continually revised. So Nick took the original fact, he added enormously to it, and since then, since he didn't get everything right, like no one does, we had to revise it again. But the contributions by Nick and so many people, their names are listed in this first paragraph. You can see the aptitude and the commitment people had to trying to clarify what the word means and what the ramifications and the challenges of transhumanism was at that time and continues to be. The second transhumanist organization, the World Transhumanist Organization, was incorporated in 2002. And that was a very interesting organization because it was extremely political. And it was the first time that politics really started getting into transhumanism rather than philosophy. And there was many problems with that, to be sure. So that organization had to be rebranded as Humanity Plus in 2008, because those of us who don't want to have politics determine our philosophical, theoretical, and even practice-based works. That could be a sidebar, but want to keep philosophy as pure, with the Aristotle sensibility, and also with the Stoic sensibility of beauty, of why we need philosophy. So here's the website for Humanity Plus. And that continues to grow, and it's an important organization. It's small, used to be bigger, but there's so many organizations today. But this one carries forth all those ideas, the original ideas, forward. In 2024, which is just recently, a group of us got together and we wrote the transhumanism affirmation. And you might say, well, why write a transhumanism affirmation? And the reasoning was because so many people had diluted transhumanism, not just with politics, but with other areas that were not fully integrated and not really necessarily part of transhumanism. For example, saying that transhumanism is the same as utilitarianism, which it is not. And that had to be explained. And Stefan, who's there, and the other keynote speaker, contributed to the transhumanist affirmation, especially in that vein. Transhumanism is more about virtue ethics, not about utilitarianism, although one can support utilitarianism, but it's not part of the philosophy itself in its codified, I'd say, honest sensibility. Another area was long-termism. Another area was, oh gosh, there's so many different areas of eugenics was a part of it. All transhumanists want eugenics. Well, that isn't true at all. And we know the term eugenics was bastardized because it was used in World War II to coerce people. But eugenics as a word, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the coercion that is a problem, and it's overly associated. But we look at human enhancement and augmentation, and that's an individual choice, of course, and no one ever ought to be coerced. But I hope you all look at this transhumanism affirmation because it has 10 different points that are stated in it to clarify where misconceptions are. So that's the last body of work that I personally worked on. And after working on the transhumanism affirmation to clean up some of the misconceptions, the false information, especially in academics, I can see where I'm cited, and I can read what's going on, and it's often, again, copying citations or copying ideas and getting it wrong. So the aim there was to try to put something out in the public eye that clarified these 10 issues that were really clearly getting things wrong in the public, in the press, in the media, by journalists largely, but also by other academics. So where I think transhumanism is going and where I'm devoted to it is looking at human plus, not humanity plus, not associated with any organization, but looking at our species and where we are today and the transhuman in us, but we're still human, and artificial intelligence and how that is shaping our minds and our behaviors. So the next human emergence, we're already there. We've already emerged with our devices, with our computers and our videos and our communications, as I said. But looking at some of the areas that a lot of people are very worried about and a lot of people are very excited about. So you have, perhaps if you go to the far extreme of those who are worried about it, taking it into some uncanny valley areas that are more science fiction than actual science fact. And the other area of over-excitement about it, over-enthusiasm towards the singularity, but saying that we have AGI today, which we do not, and saying that ChatGPT or LLMs, large language models, generative AI, have consciousness or intelligence. They do not. They're algorithms still. And so there's extremes, hyperbole on the other side. So I think it's really important in transhumanism but especially in philosophy, to always make sure that we find where the vein of truth is, and do our best to deliver that in the best ways we can, without the concern or the fears, and with the hyperbole excitement. I designed this, that was primo posthuman here. I designed it in 1996. And a lot of what I have here is still relevant today. So you're looking at decades later, it's still important. This is going into a new version, but I just wanted to show it here that we already have this connectome cloud. The metabrain we're working on with AI and Neuralink and other companies that are integrating brains, especially with people who have different injuries or diseases where their cognitive abilities and their neurological makeup is not working with the full body itself. The internal, we have implants and transplants and all sorts of stem cells and whatnot going on, but just scratching the surface of where we're going. The external layer, the different things that we add to our bodies externally. And smart skin is a really important area, since skin is our largest organ. It's the first organ to be engineered. It is the first organ to be cloned. It is the first organ to be grown in a lab, and it covers our entire body. So it'll be really interesting to see how skin becomes even smarter to protect us, but also to alert us about any dangers in our environment, and to our mode of expression as well, a blush, or a expression of who we are, what's going on in our minds. The coherence amid complexity. I wanted to start out with original transhumanism, because I think it's really important. And I know Stefan is interested in looking at different types of transhumanism, and I think everyone here is looking at what it is in different areas and what it means. But there's an underlying I don't want to say truism, but there's an underlying sensibility behind transhumanism. It is about our evolution becoming better, using technology in beneficial ways, being aware of the dangers, looking for the ethical or most mindful, holistic, honorable practices, virtue ethics, and to be aware that this is happening, and to alert ourselves as to the different consequences along the way, and the most appropriate or meaningful ways to get to where we're headed. No one knows where we're going. No one knows what a posthuman is. We can talk about it, theorize, but it's the future, and we don't know what the future will be. But the beauty of philosophy, and especially with transhumanism as well as posthumanism, is looking at what it could be, and that's the key. So looking at this, the core premise here is humanity stands at the threshold of a new ontological condition, a merger with advanced artificial intelligence that is not merely cognitive, but a fusion, but replacing the human, refining it, enhancing it, augmenting the human. So when we say transhuman, it doesn't mean beyond human, meaning letting go of our species. We are a species, and for a species to become a new species, there are many different biological, scientific, very evolutionary biology parameters with our genes and our makeup and whatnot. So you can't just theorize about being a new species. It actually has to occur. So that's a whole area that I'm not going to discuss, but for it to have a new species would be a major shift. Could we do it? Yes, indeed we could. Are we doing it now? No, indeed we are not. We're still humans. But the idea of the transhuman is being aware of going beyond. The idea of the posthuman is very, very similar. The key tenets of a human plus AI sapient symbiosis, I think, is really, really interesting, especially today. Of course, I have 5 points here: the cognitive merging, the biological integration, the virtue alignment, the transcendence through design, and the foresight ethics. I think these are very key tenets because they tie into transhumanism, and they tie into philosophies that are looking at the future and looking at the well-being of humanity or each person. The core elements of virtue alignment, I think that is the important area that I want to get to, because my talk is about the evolving mind. And if we're looking at coherence, which requires a certain amount of rationale or reason or logic, logos, amid the complexity, the pathos, and the ethos of the world we live in, we need to really, in my view, think about these things very carefully and not be swayed by different words and terms that are trying to get us off track, like long-termism, for example, and other ones. Even eugenics keeps on gnawing at us to get us to take our attention over here and argue something or fight something, rather than to be visionary philosophers of the future. So here, with the core element of virtue alignment, which ties to virtue ethics, Aristotle's virtue ethics, in transhumanism, as the classical foundation with future focused, it draws from the inspiration from Aristotle and virtue ethics, Stoicism, etc. And also AI reflecting is a mirror. So we can look at our own minds more carefully to be more cognitively aware. Individual ethics, self-responsibility, co-evolutionary development, and alignment through lived practices. Rather than parroting or copying what others are doing, swishing right or left on our devices, texting and tweeting and doing everything or Xing all the time. Our own experiences are what make us the people that we are, and it builds our brain. So I think this is really important. So you might say, well, what does this have to do with extending human life and health? It has a lot to do with it. The core of transhuman and transhumanism from its inception has been about human evolution and living longer, healthier lives from the get-go. So with that in mind, and looking at today where the industry of longevity is a multi-billion-dollar industry and one of the fastest growing industries in the marketplace, we have to find out where our role is within that. Why isn't philosophy included in this major field? It's not just in industry, in business, also in science. The work going into biology and looking at gerontology and biogerontology and geroscience, these fields are growing by leaps and bounds, and they're writing the next chapters of who humans are going to be without philosophical understanding, largely. The evolving mind is so important here. Again, our brains have evolved over time, but it's the mind that I think is the most important element for us to be discussing, because AI is integrating with it. And so how do we enhance our mind through the logic, the logos of reason and sensibility? From the early stone tools to cave paintings, AI to quantum physics, the mind's capacity for creative innovation has continuously propelled us forward and needs to keep on doing that. So just take a look at this. In 1973, brain-computer interface was coined, and the lab was set up at the University of Illinois. In 1992, IBM's smartphone. In 2010, neuroprosthetics. In 2022, OpenAI chatbot. 2030, it's predicted. I say foresight. I will say that my strategic analysis of the future is the AI, human AI will be commonplace. And 2040, the exocortex. And that would be using AI to enhance our brain beyond its capabilities. And I don't think that's anything new. Most of us have been talking about this for years. Oh, sorry. Okay, I want to go back to this slide here. Now, I can't ask the audience, but I want you to think about this just for a moment. I'm checking the time here. Okay. How many of us are using large language models on a daily basis to help us think better? Maybe to help us in an argument. We're having an argument with someone and you go to chat and you say, well, I'm arguing with John and I'm saying this is right and he's saying I'm wrong and I want to find the truth of the matter. How do I best go about it? That's something chat or any type of LLM can help us with objectively and will give us some good pointers Another issue, you're writing a chapter for a book and you're not sure if you got the abstract quite right. And so you go to Chat or Gemini or any one of the LLMs that are available, Claude, etc. And you say, I'm going to give you my abstract. Could you review it and let me know if I'm on point or if it's clear enough, cogent enough? And it will respond and tell you, yes, it's very good. However, it could be, I could make it better, or you're missing a point here, or you're repeating yourself. These are just two examples of how chat can be used on a daily basis to help us improve our mental capacity, not adding cognitive abilities or messing with our neurology, but it's like a best friend, someone you go to, a colleague, and say, what do I do when this happens? How do I deal with this? A marriage counselor, a therapist, a good friend. Chat or the LLMs are very good at that. Some of them are a bit woke. We all have experienced that. Some of them compliment too much. Oh, you're great. No, you're perfectly fine. Don't fall into that. If a chat does that to you and tells you, or an LLM does that to you and says, oh, no, you're great. You're perfectly right. Oh, you did a great job. Say, no, I don't want you to flatter me. Tell me the truth. I want some reason here, some logic here. It will pause and go back and say, okay, thank you, and then tell the truth. So they've gotten off in an area of flattery, and then we know they have some hallucinations, that's obvious, but our minds can increase without technology if we have the patience or the stoicism to meditate on a daily basis, to correct ourselves when we make a blunder or a mistake, to learn how to be more forthright, to be more introspective, to be more diligent about correcting our mistakes, more open to change. However, as a species, humans do not do that readily. We become defensive. We we justify our actions. We rationalize our actions. We as a species, not you or me, we as a species have a very difficult time just relaxing with others and not bragging or overexposing or being defensive. Today in the world, and I think this is pretty common in most areas of the world, the mental health is in a complex area, and there's a certainly so let's just say it's complex due to political issues, but largely due to the fact that technology has expedited capabilities beyond the human growing to meet them. So technology has increased, as our dear friend Ray Kurzweil says, with these exponential technologies, etc. But we have not adapted to it readily enough because we're still holding on to our reptilian brain, or I'm right and you're wrong, and polarized things. So we see it everywhere. And that is our minds. It has nothing to do with our intellectual capabilities or the functionality of our brain. It has to do with our mind and neuroplasticity. How willing are we to change our behaviors, to adapt and adopt new ways of being in the world? There are those who are very religious or very spiritual. There are those who do meditation, like I do transcendental meditation. There are those who practice yoga or Pilates or take long walks and try to have this level of not prayer, but reflection and introspection to be better humans, to be better people in the world, for peace of mind and clarity. Let's call it wisdom. But it's so hard and we need help. So when I'm looking at philosophy and I'm looking at evolving minds and coherence amongst complexity, I think AI can be a meaningful, good friend to us at this very basic stage of LLMs with all their little wokiness or overflattery or even hallucinations, this very basic stage, again, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever, I think Grok is now out, whatever the LLM platform is, they can be used very effectively and efficiently. In my research and with academic students and working with a student at USC, Sadie Stock. She's in neurosciences. Her father is Gregory Stock, a very well-known futurist. He's a philosopher and thinker. Sadie and I met at the Beneficial AGI Summit Ben Goertzel puts on about the future of artificial intelligence. As we all know, Ben Goertzel is one of the world's leading artificial intelligence, not only theoreticians, but computer scientists. Okay, just want to package that nicely for you. Sadie Stock, the student, and I were talking, and we were brainstorming about what is going on with academics and students and professors and AI. And she broke it down into 3 groups. There are the students who do not want to touch any of these LLMs or use AI to help them in their research or in their minds and thinking, because they are scholars, they have high degrees, high integrity, they have high grades, they're doing really well. They don't want AI to interfere with the purity of their academic scholarship. There are those who overuse it, that just want to let the AIs do all the work, write their papers, take their tests, do their homework, everything. And those are the ones that are just sitting back and letting AI do everything. Well, on the other side, professors are learning how to catch this. So that's another topic, but I'm just throwing these 3 groups: those who don't want to use it because they're highly intelligent, highly capable, achievers, and don't want it to interfere with their scholarship; those who overuse it because they're lazy or don't think they can do it, or, yeah, just let AI write my paper for me. And the 3rd group is the group that I think is the meaningful group that ties into the evolving mind, utilizing these chats, these narrow AIs that are LLMs or generative AIs that will adapt to us and help us on very basic levels. They help us think better, become more introspective, become more illuminated, become more reflective, help us adapt and change our thinking, because they're not another human telling us what to do. It's an algorithm, large language models that reads what we write, does its research, and will come back and tell us, if we ask it to, the truth. And getting the truth, getting a good critique, is one of the best things that we can do for building our own minds into a better place. So how does this all tie into transhumanism? I'm going to wrap this up now. Let me go to my next slide here, tying it here. The human emergence with AI, we already know it's here. Everyone's talking about it. Again, there's those who are very afraid of it. We need to control it, regulate it, and have governments tell us what we can do with it. And those who are talking about the singularity and uploading and the far post-human and leaving our humanity behind and just uploading into, an algorithm. And all of that's fine. But I'm asking you, what do you want? For me, I want to utilize the AI to help me be more mindful, to become a wiser human being, to really be a transhumanist in that sense, or an enhanced augmented human, as we're evolving our species. And if we have a subspecies and go, that's in the future, what can you do right now? And this means that we have to be really coherent as to what's going on in the world around us, and not fall into these traps, or trip over a pothole, or get pulled down a slippery slope, or get a rabbit hole, or these red herrings that are just taking us off into directions. Stay focused on who we are as a species, as a human, who you are, your autonomy, and the choices that you make, and how to utilize artificial intelligence today so that it can help you think better as we're changing, as the future is adapting. Ray Kurzweil is a very good friend of mine. I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and he says humans are going to merge with AI. I said, well, Ray, we've been talking about that for 20, 30 years, and others were talking about it before us. So when do you see this happening? He says 2030. It doesn't matter it's already happening. So we need to be mindful of it and use our brains and our minds in the best way possible. Now I want to stop in my lecture what I was doing here from my first slide to where I brought in the history of transhuman, where it's gone, where I think that philosophy needs to head and get very involved in longevity, this growing industry and field, and that is really transhumanist because it's about extending life, merging with technology, and why we need to understand it in the most essential ways so that we can explain it and help make it beneficial for others who want to use it logically and carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha, for the great presentation. It was delightful to listen to. So let's go now to the public and see what sort of conversations can emerge out of this. I think there was a lot of information. We can jump on quite a few things. So we have Stefan to start off with, and then we see where we go from there.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I was particularly happy, actually, that you highlighted the transhumanist affirmation so strongly, because really these 11 points, and also thanks a lot for developing, initializing the entire project, because actually these 11 points are the ones which also at any transhumanist event are still regularly being raised. Oh, transhumanists, isn't it just another religion? All transhumanists are utilitarians. These are exactly the questions which are regularly coming up and brought up against transhumanism. So I would actually strongly, encourage you to even share it further, make it further away, because these are the sort of the central claims which haven't reached a sufficient amount of people yet. That it's not the central focus is not the long-term future. It's actually improving the qualities also the life of the people right now, and about virtue ethics. It's not the utilitarianism principle. So thanks a lot again. This was extremely important.
Yeah, I wish I could put it up behind me so you could see. I don't know how to do that. I could, if we were in Zoom, I would know how to do it, but I'd have to go to the internet. No, it's on the internet. No, I don't want that. Thank you. No, it's on the internet. It's www.transhumanismaffirmation.org. And it's very simple, very direct. It's not a lengthy website. I think it's just one page. And the 10 misconceptions. And I think this ties into all philosophy. I think that most philosophies are misunderstood, and they ought to explain it very carefully to the areas. But because transhumanism has been called the world's most dangerous idea, because so many people in the postmodernist rhetoric and academics hate transhumanism, going from Catherine Hales and to Donna Haraway, and then and they it's just awful. And because the postmodernist rhetoric always talks about Foucault and Derrida and Lacan, and just making those philosophers so important, and they have their time, but there's so much richer with it that needs to be thought about, and talking about the future and what we're going to become and how are we going to use these technologies, and what are the ethical factors and how do we discern them, rather than having bioethicists dictating to us what ethics are. I mean, bioethics, you don't get a degree as a bioethicist largely. You self-appoint yourself as a bioethicist because you think that you couldn't. They're like politicians, and I'm being really crude here. So forgive me if anyone here is a bioethicist, but it's like, who made you a bioethicist? It's usually, oh, I'm going to be a bioethicist. And then they just want to tell you what's right and wrong. And it takes away our dignity and our autonomy. Each person should know for themselves what is best for them. But if we're constantly following influencers on the internet, we're not going to know what's best for us. We're going to try to parrot and be someone else that we think is important. So it's a tough thing. I wish there were more psychologists that were writing about the future and humans and many of the consequences we're going through with the political issues, the extreme right, extreme left, the transgender movement. Who cares who you sleep with? I mean, transhumanism could care less. I mean, it's never been an issue. But if you look around everywhere in the world now, there's this, everyone's saying, "Oh, I'm gay," or "I'm straight," or "I'm this or that." Does it matter? We're so focused on these things that no one. It only matter to those who want to argue with you. And why are we spending time with people who want to argue with us? It's just I'm very concerned about it, I guess, because it's we can do better as humans. We can do better than all these squabbling over who you're having sex with, if you want a penis or a vagina or both, or if you're right or left or who you're voting for. I mean, we must do better, and I think that's a commitment. Does anyone disagree with me? Does anyone think we're doing the best we can? I don't know.
100%. Full support. Full support.
I would actually like to jump a bit on this because we were talking right now about all these meaningless somehow conversations that are more there for public outrage and to gain political power. And revert back to something that you were talking, and I think this is actually an important topic because you were saying that at the moment we do not have AGI, at the moment we do not have intelligent systems, but we want to develop these. So what I'm curious, in your opinion, how would you say that AI system is intelligent? Because you are using the argument of an algorithmic basis, right? So, do you think that we can develop AI that has a form of non-algorithmic intelligence? So that's number one.
Oh, okay. No. Okay, no, that's a great question. It's like you can't have a human mind without neurons. Mm-hmm. We're biological, and we have a brain. And our brain, inside our brain, are neurons and dendrites, and they're making synapses, and those synapses are electrical charges. So you can't have a computer without algorithms. However, I think that's a basic fundamental. So a human brain is biological; it's got neurons. A computer has algorithms and makes AI. AI is like our mind. It's a thinking intelligence, as you said. Okay, so can you have AI intelligence without algorithms? I think it can evolve beyond algorithms. I do. But it's just like, can our human brains evolve beyond neurons? Well, yes, it can if we use algorithms. That's just one example. So then you get into the symbiosis of the algorithm and the neuron, and that forms something very different than just a human or just an AI. Another example, and tell me if I'm off track and you can disagree with me. Like, we have dogs, we have big dogs, and we'll be swimming outside at night because it's hot here in Scottsdale, and the dogs are in the yard just blankly staring off into space. And we're laughing, going, what are they doing? They're smelling. They're smelling everything around them. And we can't do that. They have hundreds of thousands to millions of times more sensory intellection from their olfactory molecules that they're smelling, those chemical molecules. And they put it together and they're thinking differently. So when my dog smells something that I don't smell, it's thinking different. It's seeing the world differently than I am because I don't know what that chemical odorant is saying. I don't know who's cooking what, or they're smelling each other's behinds. They're learning that way. Another question that ties into what you asked is, can AI be conscious, have consciousness? And then people will say, no, it can't, because consciousness is a human attribute. Like never advanced AI, like artificial general intelligence or super artificial AI, SAI or AGI. People say, no, it can't, because consciousness is a human attribute. Well, that's true, but consciousness is a human attribute because we're biological and we have neurons that are functioning in our brain that are creating consciousness. But it doesn't mean that AI, as it develops, can't have its own type of consciousness. Like my dog has its own type of smelling that creates an intellection that's different than mine. So it's conscious of things that I'm not even aware of through the olfactory, through its smell. Did that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I was intrigued by the thing that you were saying earlier about transhumanists who don't care what you're having sex with and so forth. I wonder if transhumanism, in your view, only function under a Western liberal worldview, or someone one day can come up with some kind of reactionary transhumanism where you can engineer people to only be heterosexual or something like that. What do you think about that?
Are you talking about, it's hard to hear you, engineering someone to be a homosexual?
No, a heterosexual. This is a thought experiment where people, come up with some kind of reactionary transhumans. They genetically engineer people so that everyone would be heterosexual.
No, that would be awful. No, God, that would be awful. That's eugenics. Let's engineer everyone so they're heterosexual and have that's awful. Gosh. People may choose their sexual preference based on a number of different things. It could be psychological, it could be genetic, it could be influence from society, it could be curiosity. Who knows? And some people change. There's people who are straight for years and then go gay and vice versa. I mean, no, leave people alone.
Well, no, I understand, but my question was more if you saw transhumanism as only functioning under a Western liberal worldview, or or not.
I don't. Could someone translate or say it simpler? I want to answer. I don't understand.
Okay, I can translate it. I think I understand what she said.
I'm sorry.
I guess my friend is asking whether transhumanism only works within the paradigm of Western philosophy.
Could you speak louder? I can barely hear you.
Okay, I will. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my friend was asking whether transhumanism only works within the paradigms of Western philosophy,
I didn't get that.
or could it? Okay.
Maybe Western liberalism, something like that.
Western liberalism. Can there be a transhumanism outside of Western thought, like?
Oh, transhumanism isn't Western thought. It never was. Why would transhumanism be Western thought? There are Asians who are transhumanists from the get-go, from the beginning. I lived in Japan for years. So what is transhumanism isn't Western thought. Why would you think that? There are other philosophies that maybe in China there's Confucian. It's hard for me to say Confucianism. There's Zen. I think that people like to say, oh, transhumanism is Western or United States because that's where many of us were. But I lived in Japan before I became a transhumanist. What's the big deal? I don't understand. It's just, I suppose, if we translated transhumanism into Chinese or Japanese calligraphy, for example, or African, then that would dismiss that. But because English is the largest language used in the world, whether we like it or not, that's most of it gets English. But if you look at the Transhumanist Declaration, for example, you'll see names of people that live in Iran, Indonesia, China, Japan, Africa. So transhumanism is international from the get-go, global, I should say. I don't know. What do you think?
Hello, Natasha, and I would like to ask you the following question, if that's okay with you. And can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Okay, so first of all, I would like to reiterate the congratulations that were given by Professor Sonia. My PhD research is on the history of transhumanism, and the outline that you have given the recent history is manifesto till the transhumanism affirmation that was written recently. My research has involved during these years reading those texts, following closely, and actually I have a printed copies version of the extra magazine at home, and I would like to thank you, Humanity Plus, for having preserved and my that's the appreciation. But now my question is about technology, and I ask you how much values regarding technology. So, from my take in the history of transhumanism, several technologies have been advocated. We have transhumanists have always talked about nanotechnology, about germline engineering, and about many forms of technology. And it does seem that at the end, everything surrounds AI, and I wonder, so I guess my question is AI the most important technology for transhumanism?
Your question is AI the most important technology for transhumanists?
Yes, that's my question. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, of course, because you can't have nanotechnology without AI, because nanotechnology are nano or molecular, tiny robots, right? Those tiny robots, AI, they're robots. All robots need, AI. So, yeah, I think AI is pretty much the major technology, and yes, it is important. And so, but why? And I think largely because when we created the movement in 1990s, Marvin Minsky was involved. And Marvin Minsky, as you know, is the father of artificial intelligence. And Marvin Minsky was a transhumanist, and he would speak at our conferences. And so that got tied in. And then also because most early transhumanists were computer scientists, because they were the ones looking at space exploration. So there was some artists, to be sure, and some philosophers, but we were all excited about space exploration, which requires technology. We're excited about the possibility of living longer lives and not dying so quickly at age 50, 60, 70, or 80, and live healthy. And it took technology for that. So AI, the computer has been the sole technology that has helped propel humanity forward in communication and transportation, in everything that we do. It's a data collector, and that technology, the computer, runs on, as it advanced, runs on AI. So it's if there was something else that could have come about, a different, like fire, I mean, I guess if we were back in the cave days, we would be talking about, well, is fire the main technology? Yes, because look what fire did. It kept people warm. They could burn things and build things and use fire for, fire is energy. And so, and I guess before fire, the sun. And people thought the sun is another technology that we use to build things and whatnot. So the energy of rivers and oceans and gravity, we couldn't utilize that. We still have a hard time utilizing the technology of gravity to build things. So we have to build a technology. But yeah, I think AI was and still it'll be a different, it'll change. Probably in the future we'll be looking at chemistry more ardently, and astrophysics, and looking at, if there comes a time when we think about time, and if we can slow down time or switch time, maybe then quantum mechanics and looking at astrophysics will become the core technology of people thinking and pontificating about the future.
Thank you.
Pus întrebări. Nu pus întrebări din public. Pus întrebări?
Just one second, Natasha, we're checking if there are also any online questions.
There are two questions in the chat.
Okay, so I'm going to read out loud the questions from the chat as well for the audience. So, from Dennis, I have two questions. One, I have come across the opinion that the cosmist philosophy is a left-wing transhumanism. What do you think about this statement?
Oh.
So let's deal with this and then I'll go with the next one.
Could you say the first part of that again?
Yeah, I have come across the opinion that the cosmist philosophy is a left-wing transhumanism.
What philosophy?
Cosmist, like Russian cosmist philosophy.
The cosmist. Oh, okay. Well, it depends on who wrote it. Ben Kurzweil wrote one cosmist philosophy, and he's a transhumanist. So it's very transhumanist. But there's been many people who have written about cosmos or cosmism over the centuries. So it's I would say I don't know much about it. It's not my area of expertise, but I believe it ties into transhumanism, but I wouldn't say it's a transhumanist philosophy.
And then the second question is, if AI develops self-awareness, does that mean it should be subject to a set of rights?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yes, that's a great question. Yes, I think that AIs will want to have certain rights to protect themselves, and I think that they will be subject to rights and have certain things, just like humans are. They can't go around killing other AIs or humans, and there'll be certain rules and whatnot to live by. In any society, there has to be certain parameters, certain rules to live by. So they'll have to live by certain rules, and they will need to have rights. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I think
You wrap this up. Yes.
Yeah, I think we are going to be ending the session now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Natasha, for your intervention. Thank you, everyone, for engaging in the conversation. Natasha, it was a delightful evening. And I'm going to hand over to Aura for the closing remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This has truly been a remarkable and rewarding conference. So I would like, as Andrei already said, to extend special thanks to our keynote speakers, Natasha VITA-MORE and Professor Stefan Lorenz Horner for their compelling contribution and for honoring us with this at this great event. Also, I would like to thanks to our team. So if you want to join us to see our wonderful team from the conference, and to the university, to the whole department, and to everyone. So this is our team, Natasha. And I hope see you next year at the second edition of the of the second edition of the Post-Human Studies conference series. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful start of the day. I know it's morning at you, no, Natasha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.